Well, I'm officially back on the healthy train again.
Yeah.
You know, I'm running 3 to 4 days a week again. I was really into it last year. I don't remember how much I talked about it here on the show, but I was running a lot. I was eating well. And I've gone back to, again, exercising regularly. I'm running, I'm doing yoga, and of course I'm watching what I eat. And that's the worst part. That's why I hated being on this train in the first place, is having to eat right for every meal. Fucking sucks, man. I get so much enjoyment out of good food. Like you mentioned, you were getting Papa John's earlier. I'm like, oh, Papa John's. Oh. But yeah, that's the worst part about, you know, trying to take care of yourself is, you know, the healthy food gets really fucking old really quick.
Yeah, I've been pretty good this week. I had grilled tilapia and broccoli last night, so I treated myself to Papa John's today.
Nice. Yeah, and that's the thing. I'm going to try to treat myself at least a little bit, like maybe once a week, have like a good meal, like a pizza or something, but then the rest of the week just, again, stay on point. It's tough, though. Like, you know,
I'm drinking soda, so that's not, I'm not setting a good example, but other than that, I'm treating myself today. Well,
regular or diet soda?
It doesn't matter. I'm drinking diet.
Right, and you know, I understand, but I mean, it does make a difference.
I switched to diet. I was, you know, for the longest time, I wasn't drinking soda at all. I was doing really well. I was drinking like water and unsweetened tea, and I don't know what it was. I just had, after like 2 or 3 years of no soda at all, I just had an urge for Coca-Cola.
Right.
A good old Coke. I just hadn't had one in years, and I had one, and that was it. That opened the floodgates.
Yeah, and you know, I was a big soda drinker when I was younger, but then one day I realized, I'm like, this stuff is so bad for you. It's such empty calories. And I eventually made a transition from regular to diet soda, and then I really don't drink regular soda. I haven't drank a regular soda intentionally in years. And even after a while of doing diet soda, I transitioned off of that because it is, like you said, it's not that good for you either. Even though there's no calories in it, you're still just drinking just a shitload of chemicals. You're essentially drinking acid.
Yeah,
is what you're doing.
If you're trying to like lose weight or something by drinking diet soda, not going to work. It doesn't do shit to help you lose weight.
Right. And
I basically switched to diet because it tastes like shit, and I'm hoping to sort of wean myself off soda by doing diet soda. Like, remember way back when they had those, you know, packs of cigarettes with the skull and crossbones on them? They were supposed to be like really nasty cigarettes, trying to get people to wean themselves off cigarettes.
Yeah.
That didn't work either, but I'm hoping this will work.
Yeah. And, you know, I did start drinking diet soda again lately, but it's only to wean myself off of sweets. Because one thing I was doing was over the winter and fall, as I was kind of like getting out of the whole healthy kick, is I was eating a lot of sweets. Like, I'd end every single meal with like a fucking candy bar or a cupcake or something like that. And, you know, that's a very tough habit to break once you get into. So I'm now using diet soda as a way to wean myself off of sweets, and then I'll eventually just stop drinking the diet soda altogether. I mean, I mostly drink water for the most part, but again, it's you have to wean yourself off of stuff. These people who like try these shotgun diets where they just immediately go cold turkey off of everything, you're just setting yourself up for failure. You know, you have to make it a slow process. Like, if you're overweight and you need to lose a lot of weight, start slow. That's the only way to do it, because otherwise you'll just be fucking miserable just trying to go cold turkey, and you'll break your diet and you'll be right back where you were. So Bill Paxton died.
Yeah.
Nice
segue. I like that.
Yeah, I don't write segues. I don't know what you're talking about. Yeah, no, it sucks. And it seems like we're doing this every episode. Every episode, it's somebody else dies. And
I think we've been pretty good so far in 2017. There haven't been a whole lot of really big names.
Yeah, at least he waited a couple years. And I guess it was due to complications. I guess he was having heart surgery, so apparently he already had a bad heart. And then it happened during the surgery, which, it's a shame. Because, you know, he's got quite the resume. My first exposure to him was in Weird Science back in the 80s as Chet, the older brother. But he's done so much stuff over the years. Obviously, his roles in Alien. I think
he was basically Cameron's good luck charm through the 80s.
Yeah, and even in in Titanic, he was in Titanic. He was in that 3D Titanic documentary that Cameron made years later. And, you know, even later in his career, he had some pretty prominent roles. Like the big thing that I remember. I saw
that, by the way, that Ghost of the Abyss.
I did too. IMAX 3D.
That was the way to see it.
Yeah, and that was in like 2001 or 2002, something like that, right? Yeah. So, and then, you know, I remember him from his role in, I think it was in a 2002 or 3 movie, Frailty. I don't know if you ever saw that. That was a really good movie. And then he was in that that fucking Sister Wives show or whatever. I don't know.
Big Love.
Yeah. I never saw that.
That was great. You never saw? Oh, man.
Nah, Chris didn't like it. She watched it, and I'd kind of look over her shoulder every now and again. Not really my thing. But
He had a weird career, kind of like James Cameron. They met together working for Roger Corman at New World in the art department.
Yeah. And then I think it was you that shared that meme on Facebook about how he's the only actor to be killed by an alien, a predator, and a Terminator in his career, something like that. So it just shows his range and everything he's been in, and big pop culture things that he's been in. So, he'll definitely be missed. Rest in peace, Bill Paxton.
Now I feel really bad for not doing The Crow yet, because that would have rolled right into it. He had just finished doing a season of that new show, Training Day.
Oh, that's right.
They're going to have to write him out of it now.
Oof. All right, we'll have to talk about that when we touch on The Crow. But anyway, I guess we should get this one started. Welcome, everyone, to Project VCR, your vintage cinema review podcast. I'm Mr. Jason Roskam, coming to you here from Kill Room Studios. It's about 35 degrees in here. It's fucking freezing, so I don't know if you can see me, but I've got multiple layers on right now. With me, each and every single week, is my good friend Doug. Hello, Doug.
Hello.
And this week's feature presentation is Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors. This is the first of many movies from 1987 that are celebrating a 30th anniversary this year that we kind of want to touch on. And one thing I wanted to bring up, since I think this is the first movie from 87 that we've talked about this year. Do you know what the highest grossing movie, don't cheat, what the highest grossing movie of 1987 was?
Pretty sure I remember.
All right, take a shot.
I'm pretty damn sure it was Leonard Nimoy's 3 Men and a Baby.
It was.
How sad is that?
And this is
we keep telling our kids we can't explain the 80s. We have no explanation for them.
Yeah, and this is a year that was just filled to the brim with such good movies, or at least such either good movies or movies that were just so iconic for the time, stuff that we have very fond memories of. Movies like, Fatal Attraction, which was the number 2 movie of the year, Good Morning Vietnam, Lethal Weapon, Dirty Dancing, which, every woman fucking loves that movie. But
think about that. 3 Men and a Baby made more money, significantly more money than Lethal Weapon.
Yep. We got Predator, the original Predator, fucking La Bamba. I fucking loved La Bamba. The original RoboCop. Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, a movie that we've mentioned several times on this show. Full Metal Jacket, Adventures in Babysitting, Spaceballs, The Lost Boys, the fucking Lost Boys, The Princess Bride. I heard that was a pretty good movie. Harry and
no 3 Men and a Baby.
Evidently not. Harry and the Hendersons, Inner Space, Raising Arizona.
I love that movie.
Yeah, Raising Arizona, Ernest Goes to Camp. Like, just look at a list of all the movies that were released in 87.
Hey, I saw Ernest Goes to Camp in a theater.
So did I.
Oh, my God. And we both admit it.
I know. So, oh, God. And though it wasn't all good. I mean, we had some real winners like Superman 4, The Quest for Peace. Oh, God.
With Nuclear Man. No. Yeah, Nuclear Man.
Yeah. So, but for the most part, 87 was just filled to the brim with just awesome movies from our childhood. And, 3 Men and a Baby? I don't know. But thank God we're not talking about that movie, because we were talking about A Nightmare on Elm Street 3. And it's funny, too, because our last episode, episode 25, was our Friday the 13th episode. And it never even dawned on me that we're doing like Friday the 13th followed immediately by Nightmare on Elm Street. It was
Just think how much more money Nightmare on Elm Street 3 could have made if Steve Guttenberg was in
it. There was a Police Academy movie that year, too, I think.
There's a Police Academy movie every year. It was the 80s.
Yeah. So let's just... Oh, hold on. Before we jump right into it, one other thing I want to mention. First of all, if you haven't seen Nightmare on Elm Street 3, you should definitely stop listening and go try to find a copy somewhere. I don't think it's streaming anywhere.
It is every now and then.
Yeah.
Wait a couple months, it'll be streaming.
Yeah, but I bought that Blu-ray set, that Nightmare on Elm Street Blu-ray set on Amazon about a month or so ago, and it wasn't that expensive. I think it was like $30 for all of the movies, except for the remake.
Yeah, it's pretty cheap.
Yeah, and then after watching that, then go on to Netflix, because on Netflix right now, you can stream Never Sleep Again, which was an amazing documentary that covers pretty much every movie up to New Nightmare, right? Yeah,
it's from the same producers and director as that Crystal Lake Memories that I mentioned on the Friday the 13th episode.
That you didn't like.
It's much better. It's much more streamlined, better put together, not a sprawling mess like that Crystal Lake Memories was.
Yeah.
Even though it is 4 hours long.
Yeah, but it goes by quick. And if you're, again, a fan of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, that's a must-watch. I think you definitely need to go on to Netflix and watch that. Again, it's called Never Sleep Again. A couple of things from that I just wanted to touch on very briefly was first, the whole section of Nightmare on Elm Street 2. I don't have many memories of this movie. I remember watching it one time ever and thinking, this was kind of shitty compared to the other movies. I'm not going to watch this ever again. And I don't think I did. And I really wrote it off and never thought much about it again. But the way they talk about it in this documentary gave me a whole new perspective on that movie, and it really makes me want to watch it again.
Now, have you never heard the arguments about Nightmare 2 before?
No, I had never heard that. Yeah, I had never heard that.
That's been something since the dawn of the internet.
Wow.
All the hidden subtext of Nightmare 2.
Yeah, so we won't spoil it here, but you should definitely go on to...
There's really not much to spoil at this point.
Well, sure. All right, it's allegedly it's very homoerotic. We'll just say that.
It's one of the gayest horror movies ever made. And that's one, and the sad part is that doesn't make it any better. It's roundly considered possibly the worst of the Nightmare movies.
I believe it.
And all the subtext of it makes it more interesting, but not any better of a movie. In fact, it almost makes it a worse movie because it doesn't add subtext in a good way.
Okay. So
and there were arguments too. Both the writer and director, the director I like, by the way, Jack Shoulder, he went on to make The Hidden for New Line, which is a really underrated horror flick.
Yeah.
And he denied knowing anything about the subtext while they were shooting it.
Oh, really?
And the writer did too for a while until I want to say maybe it was Never Sleep Again, where he finally admitted to saying, yeah, of course, I wrote that into it.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I was saying.
Which, I don't know. I'm not sure if I believe him when he says that, just because, it was already made a big deal, so why not go with it at that point? Be like, oh, yeah, I definitely did that. Or he's probably full of shit, but that's just my opinion. Either way, you definitely need to go and watch this documentary.
The scene with the coach naked in the shower and Fred is all like whipping him. And come on. What the hell?
Yeah, all right, fine. The only other...
literally comes out of the kid at the end of the movie. I mean, it's not really that deep.
All right, just stop. Well, one other thing I want to mention before we move on is the fact that I noticed that I watched the Never Sleep Again up to when they talked about Nightmare on Elm Street 4, and I noticed that everybody that was on there that was involved with this aged really, really well.
Oh, yeah.
Like everybody from the first 4 movies, they all look fucking good for being, 30 plus years later. So, of course, Heather Langenkamp. Oh. But yeah, even the girl that played Tina, all the kids that they talked to from Nightmare 3, they all look great. So good for them. If it is plastic surgery, you can't tell. It's not. They don't have the duck lips and all that shit. So
God love Heather Langenkamp. Poor girl can't act, but damn, she hasn't aged since New Nightmare.
Yep. All right.
That's what happens when you marry like a surfer / makeup artist or whatever the hell she did.
Oh, I have no idea.
Now she sells organic gum or some weird thing. I don't know what the hell she does now.
Okay. Right on. Moving on with our history of the movie, I'm going to start here because I think my history is probably the same as a lot of people. And I think it's one of the reasons why Nightmare 3 is so endearing to a lot of the fans of the series. And that's the fact that Nightmare on Elm Street 3 was the first movie in this series that I ever saw. Because Nightmares 1 and 2 were sort of kind of small indie horror movies that were popular, but not, mainstream popular. I had heard whispers of this other horror movie out there called Nightmare on Elm Street. Before 3, I don't think you ever really even, knew the image of Freddy Krueger. If you hadn't seen these movies, you really didn't know Freddy Krueger or were familiar with the whole mythos, because at this point, we had a whole bunch of other horror genres that were already going really strong, With Friday the 13th, we talked about that to death last episode. So when Nightmare 3 came out, and we're going to get into this later when we talk about the legacy of the movie, but it was by far the most mainstream of the first 3 movies. Got a lot of exposure, and this was the first movie that in the series that popped up on the Movie Channel, which is the one pay channel that my family had growing up because we weren't, well off enough to afford HBO or Showtime. So we had the ghetto package, the Movie Channel package. cable.
Did you even have a cable box, or did you have like the old VHS dial and Movie Channel was on channel 13 or whatever?
It was, I think that's eventually what we went to. We started off with those old style, those brown, like push button cable boxes that had
every channel had its own button instead of just, it's almost ridiculous to think about those things existing now.
Yeah, but we eventually went to just like the standard, you plug in your coax and you just get your however many channels. And yeah, the Movie Channel was like 13. And we would record a lot of movies from that on our VHS player because we had it was a Betamax player, not VHS, I'm sorry. And when Nightmare came on, it was another movie that we recorded. Finally watched it myself, and of course, already being a huge fan of horror movies at that point, I fucking loved it. And because we had it on a Betamax tape that we'd recorded, I was, because what you do when you're a kid, you watch the same fucking movie over and over and over because you don't have the internet or a lot of video games or anything else. So at this point, and this was probably in 88 or 89 when this happened, I probably watched it 50 times over the course of like a year or two. So I knew this movie very, very, very well back then. And it's still one of my favorite movies in the series, though I do appreciate some of the others a lot more now. It was by far my favorite back then, and it was my first exposure to the series. So that's my history in a nutshell. What about yours?
Kind of a coincidence. This was the first Nightmare movie I ever saw, too.
Okay. And, I think that's a theme. I think that was the same for a lot of people.
Well, if you look at the box office on it, too, I mean, this made damn near twice as much as the first Nightmare. And they're only 3 years apart, so that's a significant thing.
Yeah.
And it's funny because the first movie made a lot of money, but not in a way that, like you said, made it mainstream.
Right.
I mean, New Line was a really small company. It was an independent company until the 90s when Time Warner bought them.
Yeah.
So they didn't have to make a whole lot of money to have a success.
Yep.
I mean, they were around, since the 70s, they were mostly a distributor of like foreign films and little indie films. And they occasionally made their own movie, usually like a cheap horror flick.
Mm-hmm.
But nothing big came along until Nightmare on Elm Street.
Right.
And that's why Bob Shea for years called themselves the house that Freddy built.
Right. And, because like they were just operating out of like a very small office or something for a long time. I remember seeing that in the documentary.
Yeah. Nightmare cost not even $2 million, like just under $2 million, and made like $25 million. $25 million, there's a damn good chance half the country never even heard of it.
Right, yeah.
But for them, it was an unqualified success. Holy shit, let's make more of these things.
Oh, yeah.
And I think my first exposure to even hearing the words Nightmare on Elm Street was like seeing a TV ad for the second one, Freddy's Revenge. Before that, I don't think I even heard of the damn thing.
Right.
And we've talked about before how I was not a fan of horror films as a kid.
Yep.
And I didn't think much of even watching any of these until the album He's the DJ, I'm the Rapper.
Fresh Prince and DJ Jazzy Jeff.
Fresh Prince.
Yep.
And the single Nightmare on My Street. And I thought, wow, these must be big movies. I might have to watch one of these one day.
Wow. So that was the thing that finally got you to watch these.
Yeah, that album came out in between this one, Dream Warriors, and the fourth one, Dream Master.
Right.
But if you listen to the lyrics, it's actually going off of the second one, Freddy's Revenge.
Sure.
So I'm thinking they recorded it before the third one even came out.
I wouldn't be surprised, yeah.
But yeah, the album came out, and I thought, wow, I might have to watch these one day. And I probably saw Dream Warriors right when it came out in syndication. So I probably saw a chopped up version on TV one night.
Mm-hmm.
And I watched it, and even though I was not a big fan of horror films as a kid, I didn't even find it all that scary, as I remember.
No. For
a horror movie, it's not really all. It's definitely more of a dark fantasy.
Yeah, it's dark. Yeah, it's got a lot of dark tones to it, but it's not like jump scare kind of horror type movie.
No, it's not that kind of movie at all. And I remember even being surprised at the time how much of the gore they allowed on syndicated TV.
Nice.
But if you think about it, they don't really show a whole lot. I mean, they show a whole lot of like gross After Effect makeup, but like the scene where he leads Philip by his veins down the halls and all that. Yeah. They don't actually show like the razors. They don't show any of that.
But I mean, just the scene with the fucking arteries controlling him. That's
painful enough. And I remember they showed that on freaking TV, not even on Movie Channel. They showed that on,
Wow.
syndicated TV. But yeah, I watched that and I thought this is pretty cool. This is creative for a horror movie. I might have to watch more of these. And yeah, that was my first exposure to it.
Nice. And I think I want to say the scene where Kristen's mom gets her head cut off in the dream, that's probably the goriest scene of the whole thing. Do you recall if that made it into that cut?
I'm going to guess they probably showed that zoomed in.
Oh, so you didn't see the shit hanging from her neck?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's how they did stuff like that on syndicated TV back then.
Nice. So yeah, that was pretty much our first exposure to the series, and I know it wasn't but another year or two later when VHS rentals were really big, where I finally saw the first two movies in the series and loved the original. And I think one of these days we may have to talk about that one. But for now, we're going to stick with part 3. So
I'd imagine you watched the second one as far as a little bird flying around the room and blowing up and just thought, what the fuck is this?
I honestly have very few memories of the second one at all. Just the fact that I watched it once, I'm like, no, this sucked. And then never really thought about it again. So moving on to production history. I know we've talked about Never Sleep Again. Doug, did you have anything else to add as far as part of the production beyond?
Well, one of the reasons why the second one is such a weird and bizarre and totally off-kilter movie is the fact that Wes Craven had no involvement in it whatsoever.
Right.
He was not interested in making sequels. He didn't think the first one lent itself to being a franchise, which is funny because he's often been called back to make franchises out of his other movies.
Right.
Like instead of making Freddy's Revenge, he was off making Hills Have Eyes Part 2.
Right.
Which also turned out to be a really weird, shitty movie. Oh, God. There's a scene in that movie in which we experience a flashback from the point of view of a fucking dog. Try and imagine that.
Okay. So it's like a low point of view, and it's like looking up at the humans.
In on a dog, dissolve, suddenly we're in a flashback. What the hell?
Yeah.
It doesn't work. Anyway.
Yeah, I would imagine not.
And only once, as I recall, has he actually willfully attempted to start a franchise. And that was with Shocker, if you remember that movie.
They wanted to make a franchise out of that?
Yeah, he wrote and directed that movie with the intent of it being a franchise. Oh, God.
No, I don't see it.
It's not a good movie.
Yeah.
Basically a ripoff of Nightmare. Just instead of dreams, it was like electricity and TV and shit.
Right, because it was the guy they killed at the beginning in the electric chair, and then he came back to like fucking kill people. Yeah. I remember the music video to that with the No More Mr. Nice Guy, the Alice Cooper song.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the villain was played by Skinner from X-Files, who's pretty cool, but that movie was awful.
Yeah.
But yeah, he didn't see any franchise possibilities for Nightmare. Mainly because Nightmare has a pretty good ending, I gotta say. It does.
Yeah, well...
Any attempt to follow up on that kind of ruins that ending a little bit.
Sure, but I mean, the very, very ending, it does leave it open. It kind of lets you know Freddy's still out there and alive. So, you know, but I know they added that later on, too. Like, that was kind of tacked on right at the very end because the one guy from New Line did want to leave a little bit of an opening at the end there.
Yeah.
So.
And Freddy's Dead was just a weird, fucked up movie no matter how you slice it.
Yeah.
But so Craven came back for Dream Warriors. He was talked into it by Bob Shea. And his first idea was actually for what later became New Nightmare.
Right, yeah.
Which I wonder how that would have played in 87.
Yeah, very strange, you know, because again, his idea was to bring back Heather Langenkamp. So I guess it would have been her in this New Nightmare from 87 as opposed to the one that came much later on down the road. Yeah, it'd have been something.
And there were meta horror movies back then. There were a lot of foreign ones. I remember, the Bava kid. I don't think it was Mario Bava. I think it was Umberto Bava. I think he made Demons. That was sort of a meta horror movie. That was pretty good. Well,
even the last movie we reviewed, Friday the 13th 6, that was out before this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, at least with the references and, you know, the whole tongue-in-cheek stuff going on with that. But, yeah, no, it certainly wouldn't have been unheard of. It'd have been unique.
I think what Shea was afraid of was just alienating a growing fan base.
Sure, yeah, because that kind of would have killed any potential for more sequels beyond that, you would think.
Yeah, and that's what New Line eventually got out of it. That probably was a wise decision.
Yeah. Now,
even though what eventually became New Nightmare is, in my humble opinion, the best movie of the series. It's my favorite Nightmare movie, even over the first one.
Yeah,
I think New Nightmare is an underrated horror classic.
Yeah, I need to rewatch that because it's been a long time since I've seen that. But now, when they first tapped Craven to do it, because I know really his involvement only ended up being writing part of the script, but did they originally want him to direct as well, or was he only tapped to do the story?
I'm sure, I'm sure they would have wanted him to direct, but he already had gotten a contract through Universal to do a passion project of his. A movie that became Serpent in the Rainbow.
Okay.
Which wouldn't get out till the next year, but that's because there was a delay in Haiti. It started off shooting in Haiti, but there was a lot of political problems in Haiti, and they had to delay shooting and move it over to Dominican Republic.
Okay.
But yeah, he had wanted for years to make Serpent in the Rainbow, and when he finally got that opportunity, he finally told Bob Shaye, "Screw it, I'll take a producer credit and write a spec script for you, but I'm not making another Nightmare movie."
Yeah, and ultimately what they landed on was a shell of what we see in this final product. It was the story of these kids who kind of had their own powers within the dream to be able to take on Freddy and to fight back. But, there were a bunch of things that were changed from Craven's original drafts. Some of the characters' arcs were a little bit different. Like one of the characters, I think Taryn was supposed to be black and not a white girl. A couple other little minor changes here and there. But for the most part, the core idea was still the same, was adopted from Craven's original story.
Yeah, the original script is actually out there in a bunch of places online, and I breezed through it, and it was a lot darker, nihilistic. It involves subject matter they actually see a lot in horror films today. That Bob Shaye basically said, "There's no way in hell we can put this in a movie." The kids were a lot more suicidal than they let on in this version of the movie.
Really? Because
they still are. It's still an element of the movie, but it's basically like that's why they were all here in Weston Hills, was because they had all tried to commit suicide.
Right. But again, that's kind of like the whole story in the final version too. I said, well, a lot of it had to do with Freddy, but yeah, I understand.
And there was a lot more of the dreams in the original script. It bordered on surrealism.
Mm-hmm.
The co-writer he got, Bruce Wagner, described it as being more like a Buñuel movie, which Louis Buñuel was like he was a Spanish surreal director. He made movies like Exterminating Angel and an old silent flick called, well, it wasn't silent, it was made a few years after Silence, called Un Chien Andalou. It's a short flick that's famous for having a scene where a guy's eyeball gets sliced open, and it was part of a dream where it's supposed to represent something. I don't know, you have to take an art class to make any sense out of it. But, but it was really bizarre stuff like this, and it was actually missing a lot of sort of the violence and gore elements that we would expect out of later Freddy movies, but it had a lot of this total darkness and nihilism to it.
Yeah.
And if I remember right, none of the kids make it.
Oh, really?
Except for maybe Kristen.
Yeah, which, in the final version, several people survive. Kristen, Kincaid, Joey.
Joey and Kincaid die in the original version.
Yeah, the doctor survives. So, I mean, we still had a pretty big body count, and some significant characters ended up dying, but by the end of 3, we had several survivors.
But it's just a meaner script that Craven and Wagner came up with, like how Philip dies. We talked about this already.
Oh yeah.
The veins and the puppets and all that.
Mm-hmm.
There's none of that in the original script.
Oh really?
Instead, what Freddy does is I think Philip. I don't even know if he goes by the name Philip in the original script, but he's younger in the original script. And Freddy kills him. He's a sleepwalker still. That's his character trait.
Yeah.
But Freddy kills him by enticing him out of bed one night and leading him out into the middle of the street and getting him run over.
Oh, shit.
And Bob Shaye's like, shit, we can't do this to a little kid. We can't put this in a movie. What the fuck's the matter with you?
Yeah.
And I think it's funny because that, like the meta idea, is another idea that shows up later in New Nightmare.
Yeah, yeah. And
that's a whole sequence in New Nightmare where Freddy leads her son out into a freaking freeway.
Mm-hmm. And I think the other character, the D&D kid, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but I think his character started off really young in the original script as well.
Will,
yeah. So, who looks and sounds exactly the same today. Very fucking weird.
Yeah. Like 30 years later, and he still looks like little nerdy teenager.
Yeah. So yeah, go watch either. He's done a bunch of horror panels since then, and he's also was in the Never Sleep Again documentary. Looks and sounds exactly the same. Crazy.
Yeah.
So who did they eventually get to direct this once?
They got they turned to a longtime associate there at New Line, a woman named Rachel Talalay, who was a production assistant for years and eventually became a director herself. Made a few crummy movies there, but I still think she is one of the more respectable directors we've got going. She's now really big in TV directing. She does like a lot of BBC shows like Doctor Who and Sherlock and stuff.
Right.
But initially her first directing gigs were like Freddy's Dead and Tank Girl. Not the most auspicious debuts, but
sure.
She's a really well-respected director. But at the time she said, "Hey, I know this writing team that has some really good ideas. Chuck Russell and Frank Darabont." Which you may not remember the name Chuck Russell. He went on to make a couple movies I think he's in TV now too. But he went on to make a couple movies like Eraser and The Mask, especially.
Oh, shit. Yeah, I'm looking at his IMDb right now. Yeah,
with Jim Carrey.
He did a bunch of movies that I actually liked. He did The Blob in 1988. He did The Mask.
That was off the success of Dream Warriors.
Right.
Darabont and Russell together went on and made the remake of The Blob the next year, which I happen to love. That's another underrated horror flick.
I really enjoyed that movie. But yeah, Eraser, like you said. He did The Scorpion King, which I never saw. He did he did an episode of Fringe, which, God, I need to go back and rewatch that show. I really like that show, Fringe.
But anyway. Frank Darabont went on to do some other things that some people are familiar with. He did 3 very well-received King adaptations, Stephen King. He did Green Mile, The Mist, which should go down as a fucking classic. More people need to watch The Mist. And, of course, he made a little movie called The Shawshank Redemption.
Ah, yes.
And he is a showrunner now, an on and off showrunner. Sometimes he is, sometimes he isn't, depending on his mood, of a little show called The Walking Dead.
Oh, I heard of that.
Yeah.
pretty popular from what I understand.
Yeah. So that's what those two guys do now. But yeah, they were just a little behind the scenes writing and tech crew back in the 80s. And she brought them to the attention of New Line. And Russell hadn't directed anything yet.
Yeah.
And that's just the kind of person a low budget studio like New Line was looking for.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure he came cheap, which is always a good thing.
And so Bob Shea liked what he heard, what they were pitching at him. And so they took a stab at Craven and Wagner's script. And basically what they did was they took some elements that make this movie what I think it is, what I like about it. They made them more pronounced, add a few more elements to it to make that whole theme more pronounced. They took the characters and completely reshuffled names and character traits.
Right.
They added colorful gore and violence. And that's basically what they did with it. And just based on comparing the two screenplays, I honestly think they made a better movie than what Craven and Wagner would have made.
Oh, really?
Now, I'm basing that on the fact that Craven didn't get to do his original idea in the first place.
Right. The New Nightmare version, because he didn't do a full script for that, right? The script he ended up doing was that first draft of what we saw in 3, right?
Right.
Yeah. So, yeah, and I do like the direction they went with this. I like the fact that they did go a little bit lighter, but I mean, it was still, like we said, it was very, very dark. But one of the big things that they changed, which I guess we can talk about this now, is the transformation of the Freddy character. And
I kind of take issue with that. I see the transformation, but I don't think it's as bad as what they later accused of happening in this movie.
Right. No, and I think the character is perfectly fine in this movie. I thought it was a fantastic balance. It's the problem happened when they took that aspect of his character and they turned it up to 11 in subsequent movies.
Yeah, he wisecracks in this, but he's not a clown in this.
Right, exactly.
He's not freaking Bugs Bunny in this, like
exactly.
he is in the sequels.
Yes.
And I think when he is a little lighter and wisecracks and gives one-liners, it's in response to certain characters. Right. I think he reacts and presents himself the way those characters expect to see him in this movie.
Right.
He's almost like a reflection, practically.
Sure. Like Jennifer's death especially is the one of the more memorable deaths in the movie when he pops out of the TV, tells her this is her big break in TV. Welcome to prime time, bitch.
Right. And the first line's written and the welcome to prime time, bitch is improvised.
Yes. Which, that's Robert Englund. He is Freddy Krueger. Like, no matter what you say, Robert Englund is Freddy Krueger always and forever. One thing I wanted to touch on again in the production portion. They mentioned during that Never Sleep Again documentary that the filming got very tumultuous at times. It was very stressful on set. Tensions were high. I know, the fact that Patricia Arquette, this was her very first movie role, actually. And I know initially it took her 50-something takes to get her first scene right. So you know that you're just kind of getting off to a bad start there. And one thing I noticed in this Never Sleep Again was the
Academy Award-winning actress, Patricia Arquette.
Right. Well, hey, you got to start somewhere, right? So Craig Wasson, I think that's how you say his name, nor his character were even mentioned in Never Sleep Again. Where in that documentary, they broke down every single character and any of the actors that came back would talk about that character or talk about their character. And I found it very, very odd that he was not involved whatsoever. Like, I know the guy's still alive. Watch out for that microphone there.
Yeah.
I know he's...
my power.
Yeah. Oh, that's not good. I know he's still alive, but... Again, when they were going through Nightmare 3 in this documentary, they talked about some of the much lesser characters, like his boss, the female doctor at the hospital. Like, they had that actress back, and they talked about her character for a while, but they never talked about him. And I kind of wonder, I couldn't find anything as I was researching, but I wonder if something about the production of this movie just completely turned him off to the point where he wants nothing to do with any of these look-backs at Nightmare 3.
He's kind of been retired from acting for a good 10 years now.
Yeah.
And I don't know the story behind that. He pretty much only does voiceover work now. He does a lot of audiobooks. I don't know if there's a reason why he doesn't do any acting anymore. But yeah.
This movie may have turned him off from acting.
I know there was a lot more of that in Crystal Lake Memories, where some actors didn't show up for the retrospective, and they just completely ignored them and their character when they didn't show up. Like, Nana Visitor didn't show up to do the reboot, Friday the 13th, and she played Mrs. Voorhees in that, and they just didn't mention her character at all for some reason. I thought that was kind of weird. That's kind of a major character.
You would think.
And, I don't know what problems he would have had on set. This certainly was not a genre that was new to him at all. He was in Ghost Story in 81. That's a really good movie.
Yeah.
He was in Body Double in 84. So he was used to doing movies like Dream Warriors. So I don't know. I don't know what his problem would be.
Yeah. So
their problem with him would be.
Yeah. And honestly, I wasn't really fond of his character rewatching the movie this time around. So this
was a common thing in horror movies. He's not a very good doctor.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, this whole hospital, like the level of incompetence that goes on in this. It's not even like a hospital. It's like a center for troubled teens, but it's treated like a cross between a prison and a hospital. It's fucking weird. This whole concept of this facility.
I mean, let's just say this right now. We're not doctors, but we know this to be true. Dreaming is kind of necessary.
Yeah.
Hey, there's this drug that keeps you from dreaming. I think we should try it. Okay. Sure, yeah, why not?
Yeah. And the funny thing about that fictional Hypnosil drug that they mentioned in this, they brought back years later during Freddy vs. Jason, of all things.
They bring back the hospital, too.
Oh, do they?
I think they go back to the hospital to get the
Hypnosil. Is that the same hospital, or is it supposed to be the same one?
I know the hospital shows up in one of the movies later. I don't know if it's Freddy vs. Jason or another one.
Damn. I'll have to go back and find that out. Wow. Okay.
But yeah, all these elements they bring up later in other movies.
Yeah. So going on to...
And don't do jack with them. That's what I hate about the sequels. Freddy vs. Jason was such a wasted opportunity in a bunch of ways.
It was. I still thought it was very fun, though. But
yeah, it was fun to watch.
Yeah. Anyway, going on to the legacy of this movie, we already mentioned the box office. I think the movie had a budget of about $4.5 million and ended up making almost $45 million at the box office. So 10 times its money. So like we said, this was the first movie in this series that really brought it out to the masses. It was the Oh, I just had it up. It was the 24th highest grossing movie of 1987, which again, this was the year of Three Men and a Baby, and then all those other actually good movies that we listed before. So it's in pretty good company. And again, grossed higher than movies like The Running Man, Spaceballs, Adventures in Babysitting, Lost Boys, Princess Bride, Harry and the Hendersons. Had a much bigger box office than any of these other movies. Raising Arizona? Come on. Really? So, yeah.
Well, I'm the guy that hated Lost Boys, but it made more money than Spaceballs. That's not right.
I know, right? So, yeah, it clearly this is when people really started to take notice of this series and really enjoy it. And it's still the third highest grossing movie in this entire series. The only two movies in the Nightmare series that have grossed more than this were 4, which came right after this because it was just, again, piggybacking on that popularity. And then Freddy vs. Jason, which we've already talked about, which obviously we know why that was so popular, even if it wasn't executed as good as it could have been. It was still a very high-vis movie at the time. And then, yeah, we talked about the transformation of Freddy. This was where he really started talking more throughout the course of these movies, which, again, it was good because it was just all like a mind fuck. Every time he talked to one of these kids, he was just fucking with them and, toying with them and setting them up for the kill. Whereas in later movies, they really just kind of went off the deep end with the puns and just this comedic side of Freddy.
Yeah, so I'll agree with all the more critical fans that it ruined the character, but in this case, I think it fit the story, it fit the script.
Yeah, and if they could just had kept it at that level for the sequels, then I think it would have been fine. Because I think it added a nice element of depth. If you're going to go a little less serious and gritty than the first one, then you kind of have to take him in that direction a little bit.
Yeah, that was one of the things I found really interesting about this movie was he appears to and reacts differently to everyone he appears to in this movie.
Yeah.
He doesn't always make a crack or a joke to any of the kids. Hell, it got really interesting towards the end when he appears in front of the doctor as his bones.
Yeah.
He honestly, if you think about it, when the bones came to life, it could have been Freddy there. It didn't have to be this, reanimated bones walking around. It could have been anything.
Sure.
But that's how he chose to appear in front of the doctor.
Yep. So moving into the movie itself, we start off with, I want to talk about this opening scene because we start off with this scene showing Kristen building this like paper mache version of the Freddy house, Nancy's house from the first movie. And this scene is it reminded me a lot of the opening scene of the first movie when you see Freddy constructing his finger knives. Yeah. You remember that? And it's this weird juxtaposition between the two different scenes, very, very similar. But then Kristen's kind of takes a different turn. But I really liked that opening scene because a lot of it was just these close-up shots of her doing this art project, essentially, and just on her fingers and just doing all the construction. And for some reason, it really reminded me of that opening scene in the first Nightmare.
Yeah. And I like that it's something that we return to later.
Yeah. And because that whole scene gets revisited in a slightly different version. And we're introduced to the character of Kristen, who is our main, is it protagonist?
Yeah.
Protagonist, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, she counts as the main protagonist.
Yes, I was just trying to find the right word there. And of course we're introduced to her whore of a mother right off the bat. And we go right into her first dream sequence, which I don't think anything super significant happens. We're treated to a lot of like Freddy imagery, some really neat imagery in this first dream, especially when she goes into that room with all of the hanging bodies. That was I found that very creepy for some reason. And then over the course of this, Freddy kind of like frames her for committing her own suicide or for attempting suicide, and then she goes to the hospital, and we're introduced to the rest of the characters. Now, you wanted to talk about some of these individual characters, so
I think the key to really understanding this movie is to look at these individual characters.
Okay.
Because this movie, and I think this is important to see in every really good movie. Mm-hmm. Is this movie is actually about something.
Right.
All of these kids have something in common, which is obvious. That's what the movie is about. They're all the last Elm Street kids. But really they have more in common beyond that. These kids are all troubled in other ways.
Right.
They're not just they're crazy because they're being bothered in their dreams. They all have other problems beyond that. Yep. You have Taryn, who's the drug addict. Yep. You have Joey, who's been rendered mute.
Yep.
I mean, they each have a problem.
Yeah.
And
Kincaid's a real hothead. Yeah,
I know.
He's very
disturbed.
So
scary. Every now and then he stands up. Can you believe that? They throw him in a padded room because he stands up.
Yeah.
But yeah, they all have other problems, and that's why they're here. And that's the first part to understanding what this movie is really about. Psychologically speaking, there's something behind their inner torment. They're all being abused, basically.
Right.
In one form or another.
Mm-hmm.
And they learn through analysis, not very good analysis because it's not the doctors doing that does it.
Yeah.
But they learn through dream analysis that they each have some inner strength that'll help them get over whatever trauma has been caused by this abuse.
Right. Which then kind of manifests into their special powers or whatever that they have in their dreams.
Right. And their powers aren't just something they have to discover. Their powers are all specifically something that they want.
Yes. Yeah. Well, like an easy one is Will, who's the nerdy kid. His he's introduced as like this big kind of D&D type nerd, even though it's not actual D&D, they call it something else. But he wants to be the wizard master. So that's his thing, is he's a wizard. He can walk in his dreams, and he's this walking wizard that can, I don't know, shoot rays out of his fingers and whatnot.
Right. And sometimes it's a little more obscure than that to understand why they have the powers they have. Like Taryn becomes streetwise and becomes tough and can use knives. Well, why would she have that kind of power? Because she is a rehabilitated drug addict.
Yes.
And that's how she got to be a drug addict, was she couldn't fight back the offers and all the other drug users that talked her into becoming a drug addict. Mm-hmm. And now this would give her the strength to fight all that off.
Right. And but before moving on, talking about Taryn too, she's in an even shittier situation, because while a lot of the other kids are kind of removed from their situations when they're in this hospital, she's still got this fucking skeevy nurse guy who's, trying to hook up with her, trying to tempt her with drugs while she's there in that hospital. So she's not even safe from all the bullshit that she had to deal with on the outside. In addition to having to deal with these fucking incompetent doctors and, Freddie, she's also got to fight off this fucking pervy nurse guy that's trying to get with her and tempt her back with drugs and all that. So.
And all those scenes of the kids on their own having those interactions are there to make you understand these things.
Yeah.
What their outside trauma is from. They're informing you why they have the powers they eventually discover.
Yep.
It's all because of these other things that have had and are still happening to them. Mm-hmm. And it's all of this is textbook Freudian. This is how psychoanalysis works. Mm-hmm. It's to uncover these very things. Basically, an alternate title for this movie would be Sigmund Freud's X-Men. That's what I call this movie. And
that's good.
And that's really what this whole movie is about. This is about uncovering abuse and finding empowerment.
Yeah. No, that's good.
And that's, to that extent, that to me is probably why this movie doesn't seem as scary as its predecessors, is because it kind of stops being about Freddy at a lot of points.
Right, yeah, because
it's more about how the characters are dealing with Freddy.
Right, and how they're fighting back, essentially. How they're finding that inner strength and they're using it to fight back.
So isn't it interesting then that this becomes the fan favorite?
It's not surprising.
Because usually, especially in a series that is about the villain, where all the fans have embraced the villain, mm-hmm. that they pick the movie that's not the showcase for the villain.
Right.
As their favorite.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
I find that just absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, because I'm sure a lot of people relate to that, because everybody's got some fucked up aspect of their life, something that they wish could be different, something that, they wish they could do in their dreams or whatnot. And yeah, it's again, like you said, finding inner strength. And,
the only thing missing from all that, piling on the textbook Freudian and the psychoanalysis and all that is that most of them, save for one or two of them, aren't blaming all this on their mother.
Right.
And I think that's why Amanda Kruger's in the story. Now they can make it just simplistic Freudianism. We're blaming fucking Freddy on his mother.
Yeah.
By the way, none of that was in Craven and Wagner's original script.
Oh, none of the Amanda Kruger stuff?
Yeah, none of the lore about, bastard son of 100 maniacs or whatever. None of that was made up by Craven. All that was added by Russell and Darabont.
Oh, wow.
And that became fucking part of the mythology.
Yeah.
The rest of the series.
Yep. Yeah.
Those two came up with it, not Craven.
Nice. So.
But yeah, I thought, as I'm putting all this together, watching the movie, I thought, well, all it's missing is the shit about the mother. And I thought, well, there it is, Amanda Kruger right there.
Yeah. Wow.
Not only that's even a very psychosexual subplot. She was fucking gang raped. There you go. There it is. There's your Freudianism right there.
Mm-hmm. Damn. That's I don't know how I can top that. That's I think that's it. I think we should go ahead and score this thing and go home, right?
Okay, good. I want to go see Logan. Let's go.
Oh, are you going to go watch that?
I got to work. No, I got to see Logan. I have to see Logan.
So I do want to touch on a couple of the characters really quick. We do have Perry White himself, Lawrence Fishburne, in the movie, one of his earliest roles.
Larry Fishburne.
Oh, I'm sorry, Larry Fishburne.
That's how he's credited in the opening. Larry Fishburne.
Yeah, so he's one of the orderlies. He's probably one of the only likable employees of the whole hospital. A
lesser movie would have had him, like abusing the patients or something. But no, he's just a cool guy that knows everything about the place.
Yeah, where, he still has to put his foot down at times. He still has to, sometimes overtake some of the kids and sedate them. But, overall, he's very empathetic with the kids. Yeah. He's very protective of them. So it's a very underrated character in this movie because he doesn't get a whole lot of screen time. But the time that he gets is very, very important, I think.
Yeah.
And again, he's like one of the only bright spots of this whole fucking facility, which I'm still trying to wrap my head around. Because when Kristen got there, it was like her mother just kind of admitting her, right? Because she had attempted suicide. She went to the hospital for a little bit. Then her mother brought her and just dumped her here. Is it a prison? Is it like a fucking psycho ward? What the fuck is it?
Took me a while to understand Kristen's power, too.
Oh, the fact that she could pull people into her dreams?
Yeah, because they only mention that once real fast, and it's like you blink and you miss it. It's right there when they're at Nancy's desk there at the beginning.
Yeah, well, it was apparent to me because I've seen the movie 100 times.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but I guess if you're only watching this once, it can kind of go quick. The whole pace of the movie, very, very fast.
Yeah.
Rewatching it this time around, it moved very quickly.
In fact, that got to one of my peeves with the critics who didn't like it when it came out. Mm-hmm. Was especially Roger Ebert in particular. A bunch of critics had this complaint, but Ebert gave it 1.5 stars, and he said the problem with the movie is that it doesn't let you empathize with any of the characters. Then I thought, what the fuck are you talking about? That's the whole point of the movie is empathizing with these characters. But I see what he's talking about watching it again because it gets, in trying to justify its existence as a horror movie, it very quickly gets to dispatching these kids.
Yes.
So yeah, if you're not paying a whole lot of attention, it looks on the surface as just like another slasher flick. Here's a kid we've known for 5 minutes, and he gets to killing him.
Yeah, one of the first kills is Philip, who is played by Bradley Gregg, who I call a poor man's Corey Feldman.
Yeah.
Does he not look and sound? He sounds exactly like Corey Feldman.
He's trying to act like Corey Feldman.
Yeah, and he gets offed right away. And his scene was the artery scene, which, oh god, that still gives me chills when I see that and think about that. It's it was a very well done scene.
And his character was so contrived. He likes to make puppets, and he's a sleepwalker. Yeah. It's like they made that up just so he could die that way.
Yeah, that is pretty ridiculous when you think about it. But the execution of that death scene I thought was fucking flawless. It's one of the best death scenes in the movie. And it's this strange going back and forth between I don't know if we've ever seen this before where you're seeing the dream version of what's going on when Freddy cut the fucking arteries out of him and he's walking him like a puppet, and then it flashes to other people's perspective outside of the dream as to what's going on with him. Where just like, oh, it looks like he's sleepwalking. It's, go back to bed or whatever. Where you flash back to the dream portion and it's this very horrific scene from his perspective, because it starts off when Freddy turns into the puppet and then fucking grows to be Freddy. The first thing he does is he like goes shh, and he like makes it to where he can't scream or talk, and that's one of the most horrifying things that can happen in a nightmare. Like, I'm sure you've probably had them before. You've had a fucking nightmare where you're being chased by a killer or something and you can't fucking scream, like you can't yell for help or anything. That's one of the most horrifying feelings in a nightmare as it is. And then like it continues on with the cutting of the arms and legs, pulling out the arteries, and he's like controlling him walking. So it's nasty from like a gore perspective, but again, it's very, the music that's playing during the dream portion, it's very creepy, and it's this strange comparison between what's happening in the dream and people's perspective of what's happening to him from the outside.
Yeah, they touched on that in the first movie. Like the scene where the girl's getting killed and flying around the room.
That's true. Yeah, that's right.
But yeah, they really expand on that here in the way you just described, because they really didn't have, looking at it from that perspective in the first movie, they really didn't have any of that.
Yeah.
That just sheer helplessness like that.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, that really touched a nerve, especially when I rewatched it this time. And I know all of these death scenes by heart. I know exactly how the whole movie was going to go down rewatching it, even though I hadn't seen it in 20 years. But this one really kind of struck a nerve with me this time. I don't know what it was, but yeah, this death scene, the death of Philip, was pretty powerful. And the emotion shown by the other kids as they're watching and they're seeing what's happening. It's the acting in the scene, I thought, was really, really well done for this group of kids that overall can't act for shit.
Yeah.
So
that is something. The acting was up and down in this movie.
Yeah. I don't know if there's anything else character-wise that we really need to touch on. Obviously, Heather Langenkamp came back to play Nancy. And really, tell me if you agree with this. I feel like this would have been a better part 2. Like, if they had just like completely not done part 2 and then just made this the first sequel, it would have worked so much better.
I would go so far as to say that for many fans, this is part 2.
Yeah, no, I can see it. But yeah, they brought back Nancy, they brought back her dad, who, I didn't realize this until I saw the Never Sleep Again documentary, but he wasn't a cop anymore. He was a fucking security guard now. And that's because
shit, I don't think I ever put that together too.
Yeah, you see him in the bar, he's already like half drunk and he's still got like a shot and a fucking beer and some other stuff with him. And
Little Nemo's.
Yeah.
That was the name of the bar. I still can't figure out if there's any significance to that or not.
No clue. But, he was wearing a security guard outfit because he had like a little security patch, as opposed to when he was in the original movie, he was like a lieutenant or a detective or something. So, you can see how far he fell after the events of the first one. And, of course, Nancy, you notice the gray streak she had in her hair? You wonder if that's some sort of like post-traumatic kind of gray streak that...
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
Had a very Bride of Frankenstein feel to it.
Yeah. So, I don't know if there's anything else you want to touch on character-wise as far as the movie goes.
Just that whole trauma or abuse to trauma to empowerment thing. They really worked on carrying that over to every one of the kids. Mm-hmm. And you can really see that if you stop and look at all the kids, like a Joey, the mute.
Yep.
His strength that he eventually finds is that he can speak.
Yeah.
Because that's another trait that you find, especially in those abused circles, is kids find they can't speak, or they can't talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's his power is eventually he can talk.
Yeah.
And I thought that was very kind of almost a sweet thing to have in the movie. That becomes his strength. And probably the most layered character to look at that way is Kristen, which is fitting because she's the lead character.
Yeah.
And you really have to look at her character to figure all that out. All the others, it's kind of surface to see all this stuff. But her, you really have to kind of look at her to see all those layers, because at first you're not even sure what her trauma is from.
Right.
Besides Freddy.
Mm-hmm.
But if you think about it, her relationship with her mother could result in some things, like her mother keeps seeing different men.
Yes.
Well, that could be where the abuse is coming from.
That's true. Yeah, because
these different men coming by.
Yeah, because they're not all clear winners.
Right, and that's also a common source of abuse. And that could be it. And oh god, I just had this.
Don't hurt yourself. All right, well, before Doug has an aneurysm, if you think about it, we'll come back to it, but we'll move on to things that we specifically liked and didn't like, and I'll start with a couple. I loved the overall tone of the movie. It was still overall very, very dark, very, very, I wouldn't say lighthearted. Some very serious, dark themes, which we've covered at length here. Liked pretty much all of the death scenes. I think they were fairly creative, maybe except for Will. His death was kind of, it was nothing. But most of the death scenes were pretty creative. A lot of them had to do with, again, the person's troubled past, where, as they found their powers based on, their history and their troubles, Freddy also used some of those to then kill those people, like Taryn with the drug overdose, Philip with the puppety shit. So, it wasn't all fine and good. Like, he used Nancy's dad as the way to get her to drop her guard and kill her, so as much as they were good at finding their inner strength and their inner powers, Freddy was also good at finding that and using that to exploit them. So, I loved all of that. Anything else that you really liked about the movie overall that we haven't touched on?
No, that's pretty much it.
All right. So things we didn't like. I've got a couple here. First of all, I touched on this already. Some of the acting, not that good. A lot of the performances. Again, you gotta give some people credit. They were young kids that they cast in these roles. You can't really expect too much from them. Patricia Arquette, again, Academy Award winner, Patricia Arquette, not the greatest performance in the world in this movie. One thing that especially bothered me about her is she had the same Kim Basinger Batman thing going on, where she was screaming at the top of her lungs in multiple scenes, back to back to back, and that kind of got on my goddamn nerves. I know I mentioned that when we did our Batman episode last year. That really got on my fucking nerves. Anything else that really bothered you that you didn't like about the movie?
Yeah, quite a bit. The acting was kind of spotty. We saw that a lot in the 80s, and that was because basically of budgets and quick turnarounds. They didn't really have time to do a whole lot of searching for great actors.
Yeah, fuck it. The scene was good. Cut it. Print.
Yeah. Let's move on.
Mm-hmm. We've got 2 days to shoot this whole movie. Let's go. Sorry.
The dialogue. Darabon's a good writer. I don't know if they just didn't have time to do a good script or what, but there's a lot of lines that I think they could have really rewritten if they had the time. The one that really sticks in my mind is when that floating door to the boiler room appears right in front of them.
Yeah.
They stare at it for a minute, and one of them says, "It's a door." I'm like, no shit. Thank you. I'm glad you said that.
Yeah. I never would have known. But it doesn't go anywhere. Yes, it does.
The other thing that really bugged me was some of the death scenes really fit the characters as they were supposed to. And some of the death scenes, I'm still scratching my head thinking why they designed them the way they did. For the most part, it worked. This was the other thing I was thinking of with Kristen. This is why I think we were supposed to look into that her abuse was probably sexual and probably brought on by her mother bringing men by that she wasn't caring too much about.
Right.
Is look at how Freddy attacked Kristen.
The fucking penis worm?
Yes, the penis worm. Exactly.
Yeah.
That was a straight up sexual assault in a dream.
Yeah. Go watch the Never Sleep Again documentary. They talk about how when they first created that, they made it flesh colored, and they're like, this is a huge fucking penis. We have to do something about this.
Well, the flesh color, I think, too, was supposed to be because Freddy's flesh colored.
Of course, yeah.
But it was still deliberately in the shape of a penis.
Yeah, very, very phallic.
Yeah. And that made sense. One that didn't make sense to me and still doesn't make sense to me, maybe they explain this in Never Sleep Again, I don't remember, but Joey's near-death experience.
The nurse?
What the hell?
Well, yeah,
the tongue's shooting out and all, what?
Yeah, all they really mentioned...
I want there to be more to that than he's just a horny teenager.
I think that's all it was, because that's really the only thing that they mentioned in that Never Sleep Again documentary. Just that I remember the actor saying, yeah, Joey was really into super hot women, and not much has changed. I'm like, that's it? Okay. So no, yeah, that's what it was. Freddy used his fucking horniness, his attraction to that nurse, again, to get to him. Why he didn't just kill him?
I see so much more creativity in this movie, and then suddenly there's, some weird dream brought on by horniness, and just right in the middle of all this.
Well, do you remember the stuff that they cut from that scene that they talked about in Never Sleep Again? Because that scene where she bound him with the tongues was supposed to go on longer, because it was supposed to go on where they put her in full Freddy makeup, still fucking topless and like straddling him. So it was essentially the head of Freddy Krueger with these giant fake tits hovering over Joey for a few seconds, I guess. And I guess she was supposed to talk in Robert Englund's voice, which I think that would have just killed a whole lot of masturbatory fantasies at that point. So it's probably good that they didn't do that.
I understand Will's death scene, or at least his power and all that, but I think his death scene could have been at least a little more elaborate.
Yeah, it was.
Had more to it.
Yeah, it was awful. Like all it was he shot Freddy with his lasers, stopped that crazy wheelchair from attacking him, and then Freddy just walks up to him and grabs him and says, "I don't believe in fairy tales," and just fucking sticks his knives in him. That was it.
Yeah.
So that was a pretty.
So yeah, at least half of them were really good and fit the characters and made sense and showed the creativity inherent to this whole series, really. And one of the reasons why I like this series. And half of them were just, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't get it.
And again, the whole movie.
And also Jennifer's death.
The TV?
Yeah. Especially at the beginning, a lot of these deaths could be explained by the hospital staff or by somebody near the kids, like Kristen looked like she had tried to kill herself.
Yeah.
Philip looked like he tried to jump off the ledge or whatever. Yeah. Sometimes people look like they jump 3 feet in the air and shove their heads in a TV.
It was clearly suicide. I don't know what you're talking about. And why Lawrence Fishburne's character wasn't fired right then and there for that, I don't know. Because like right before that, he caught her in there when she was supposed to be in her bed, and he's like, all right, you can stay up and watch TV. And then she's fucking dead. Like, how was he not fired after that?
Yeah, I don't...
So a few inconsistencies.
Yeah, again, we mentioned this already, but yeah, none of the doctors in this movie were intelligent.
No, not at all. Even our main doctor, I can't remember his name, the guy who wanted to bang Heather Langenkamp, like he was, he was awful. He was terrible. His female partner, the old lady, she was awful. Again, Lawrence Fishburne was the only somewhat good character.
And the guy who ran the hospital, which I think showed up in one scene.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
He only said something like, what will the parents say? And translation is, what will the people with the money say? Exactly,
yeah. So clearly this is just like a shitty place for these kids to be. Like,
this is common to horror movies, especially in the 80s and 90s. But yeah, the doctors were just straight up stupid in this movie.
Yeah, and it just goes to show, they mentioned this in that Never Sleep Again, but it's just this betrayal by all of the adults in their lives, essentially, is what's happening to these kids. These doctors, the staff, their parents, like every adult that they should be able to trust has just completely betrayed them and has put them in the situation where they're now vulnerable, and some of them die. So
I think there could have been better ways to show that, though. Like Kristen's mom was just this sort of distant, heartless person.
Yeah.
And they didn't make her look like an idiot.
No, she was just a fucking cunt.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, the doctors were just stupid.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yep. So, okay, before we close this up, I do want to mention that one other scene. That scene that happens later on in A Dream of Kristen's, that's the exact same sequence of events that happened at the beginning of the movie. When she's building the house, her mom comes in, she's got the guy waiting for her. But when you see her later on in that dream, she's much more empathetic. Even though the dialogue is exactly the same, the actor placement is exactly the same. It's like a shot-for-shot remake, except for the mother is much more pleasant. She's much more motherly, you know.
That's the Freudianism. Everything in these kids' dreams are are it's wish fulfillment. It's what they want.
Right.
Just like their powers. It's what they want.
Yeah. So I loved that scene in particular. That kind of juxtaposition between the first scene, the one that actually happens, and then this one in Kristen's dream, where again it's probably just Freddy fucking with her. He's like, "Oh, this is what you've always wanted. Your nice mother to be, good to you and everything else." Where it's just that mother, her performance was really, really well done in both of those scenes. Like,
but that's something that gets me. Where does their dreaming and his fucking with them stop and start?
Honestly, I think the entire thing is just him fucking with them. Like you get the feeling that at any point he could just kill any of them anytime he wanted to. He could just immediately start their dream, immediately pop in and just have his knives in them before they even realize what the fuck's going on.
Okay, so let's look at Dr. Neal's character arc throughout this whole movie.
Mm-hmm.
At the end, he sees the skeleton come to life and all that. Yeah. He never actually sees Freddy throughout the course of the whole movie.
Nope.
And I thought that was because he never knew Freddy.
Right.
He only knows Freddy through the kids, so he never experienced Freddy through their stories, through Elm Street or whatever. Right. So he never would have seen Freddy. But when he does at the end, it's through the skeletons, which, by the way, that stop motion effect was by Beswick Studios, who also did the stop motion effects in Evil Dead 2 the very same year.
Nice.
And the only other supernatural experience the Doctor has is seeing Amanda Kruger.
Right.
Which is the only other supernatural experience in the whole freaking movie. And he wasn't asleep for any of that.
That is true.
What the hell was Amanda Kruger? Was she a spirit? Was she a projection of Freddy like the skeleton?
You know what? I thought about that this time around. I never thought about that before, but could she have just been...
Why did Freddy make it look like Kristen was trying to kill herself? Because if it looked like that, she was going to end up in that hospital with the other kids.
Right.
So was that the plan? Was he trying to get her there with the other kids?
That is possible. And, was his master plan to have them bury his remains for whatever purpose? Like, maybe that, set him more free. I don't fucking know. But, I was thinking, what if this whole projection of Amanda Kruger wasn't really her? What if it was Freddy just fucking with the Doctor?
I wondered that too.
So
because throughout the whole series, we don't see anything supernatural besides Freddy.
Right.
Except every now and then we see Amanda Kruger.
Mm-hmm. It's a good point.
Are we actually seeing Amanda Kruger? Or are we seeing just another side of Freddy?
I wouldn't be surprised if it's another side of Freddy, honestly. Like, what would give her any kind of supernatural powers or ability to come back and do this? And again, it was all for nothing anyway. When, she came back, she had him bury Freddy and all that. It appeared that he went away. But the last scene of the movie, you see that light come on in the fake house, giving you a hint, okay, there's probably more movies to come, which there were. So, what was the whole point of that?
And any other hint that there's anything else supernatural out there is revealed to be bullshit.
Right.
When we see the ghost of Nancy's dad later, It's not the ghost of Nancy's dad.
Yep.
It's just Freddy.
Mm-hmm.
Everything else like that throughout the whole series, not just this movie, is revealed to be Freddy.
Yep.
Is Amanda Kruger Freddy?
I believe it. I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, it's never truly revealed, so it's just something that we just debate about in forums like this forever and ever. But I certainly think it's possible, for sure. One other thing before we finally close this out, a lot of religious symbolism in this that never really comes to play in any subsequent movies. I don't know if that was just something from the writing and directing team that they wanted to interject into this, but again, it was nothing that ever came up again later. The whole thing with his mother burying the body in hallowed ground, holy water, the crucifix, a lot of religious imagery in that part of the movie, but it never really made much of a difference in the long run.
Yeah, I don't know if it has any particular meaning or not.
Yeah.
It does. It's of no consequence, so I wonder if it had any meaning.
Yeah. So tell us what you think. Hit us up on Instagram, Project_VCR, and respond to some of our Nightmare 3 posts with your thoughts on any of this imagery. Is Amanda Kruger really Freddy? Let us know what you think. I'd be very curious to hear. Or on Facebook. We've also got a Facebook page like that, and reply to any of our messages on there. So you ready to score this thing?
Sure.
All right. Well, we will start with you. What are your final thoughts and final score?
My final score of Sigmund Freud's X-Men starring the giant Freddy penis. Let's see. It ranks as my third favorite of the series.
Okay.
Behind New Nightmare in the first.
Yep.
New Nightmare is still my favorite. I think that is just a mind-blowing movie.
Yep.
This is a great idea with some really it's ambitious, and it's really sweet in what it tries to do and how it goes about it.
Yeah.
And it really layers these characters, and it does great things with these characters, and it does right by them.
Yeah.
And I really, really appreciate that somebody wanted to make a movie like this. But yeah, it's very low budget. It has that, it suffers from that thing New Line was doing at the time where they were just trying to crank these out.
Yep.
The acting is not great. The writing could have been better.
Mm-hmm.
I give it a 7.
Okay. I'm kind of with you. The fact that there's multiple layers to this movie, that it's far deeper than you'd see in just an average horror movie of the time. Again, the acting was subpar, but the characters were good. And one thing that we didn't really touch on that I really enjoyed about this movie was the set design. Even though it was very obvious they were on sets, I thought that the design of the sets themselves and the environments themselves are really well done. And it really helps you kind of get engrossed in the movie. It's a pivotal movie in this series. It was a fun movie, especially when I was younger. Probably not the best movie in the series. Definitely not my favorite in the series. I don't know if I could rank them all right now. I'd have to sit and think about it. But it's still a good movie. It's probably one of the only ones that I would continue to rewatch, especially after going back and watching pieces of 4 and 5. Oh, no. And then fucking Freddy's dead. What were they thinking? But I do have to give it a 7 also. I think it was good enough to warrant a 7. A well done movie for the time and the genre. So that's what I got. Talking about other movies in this series, some of these could be potential reviews for us down the line. The original Nightmare, of course, we skipped right to part 3, and a lot of it just because of the anniversary. But that's certainly on the radar. It's a movie that I think we could definitely really get into and talk about, and I'm sure a lot of people have a lot of fond memories of that. Like you said, New Nightmare, that's something I would love to revisit. That
is one of my favorite horror films ever.
Yeah, and I know you and I saw that together in theaters when that came out. So, yeah, we've got a storied history with that. We could tell the story about the vinegar and the Cadillac. But we'll save that for
the AMC Stockdale 6. I don't even know if that still exists.
No, that's been gone for a long time.
Damn.
Yeah. So, yeah, those are potentially on the table, especially if anybody wants to hear them. If you do, again, hit us up on Facebook and or Instagram and let us know what you want to hear. To close this up, speaking of things that we may want to do in the future, we were brainstorming video game ideas, and when I found out that you have never played Half-Life 2, I almost shit myself. Because that is probably my second favorite game of all time. But through the course of our conversation, we both uncovered that neither of us have finished the original Half-Life. So that is what I would like to do as our next video game review. I'm not going to force you into it, but if you're on board, I think we should definitely do that as our next video game review.
Okay.
I went ahead and I installed the Half-Life 1 Source version on my Steam account. Didn't you say there was like an even better version out there somewhere?
I just installed whatever the default version of Half-Life is on Steam, and it looks wonderful.
Okay. Yeah, so it
goes up to 1080p, and I played the training level on it, and it looks and sounds great.
All right, so yeah, we'll have to do that. So keep an ear out for that. I'd say we may get to that within the next month or so. Our next movie review will be The Crow. I know we've been talking about it for a long time. I know, Doug, you've already watched it. Bob Healy is definitely on board. We just have to give him a couple days' notice, so that will be our next movie review, no matter what. So keep an ear open for that. And in some other news real quick before we close out the show, I heard that Nintendo Switch Off was released today. What is it called?
The Swatch.
Yeah, it's like a watch that you mount into a video game console, something like that.
I don't feel like spending $300 or $400 for a Zelda game, so I probably won't buy it anytime soon.
It would be at least $400.
Yeah.
I was listening to another podcast that actually broke down like all the costs that you would probably incur just to get a Switch right now, and even a single game. And yeah, you're probably going to be paying close to $500. So yeah, fuck that. I can wait.
And don't eat the games.
Yeah, please God, don't.
Did you read that? They put that bitter chemical agent on the contacts of the game cartridges.
Why?
Apparently, they decided these things are so small that to deter anyone from eating them, apparently people are buying these $300, $400, $500 worth of hardware and leaving them out for their toddlers to eat.
Oh.
So to prevent that from happening, Nintendo is coating the very small cartridges in this very, very bitter agent.
Well, that's just shitty parenting. I mean,
that's what I thought. What the hell, people?
Yeah.
This shit costs good money. Put these things back in their cases, for God's sake.
And the last thing that I wanted to touch on was I may need you to talk me out of buying Horizon Zero Dawn, because everything I'm seeing is saying that that's a fucking phenomenal game, and it looks right up my alley. And I'm fighting it right now because I know I've got 1,000,001 other games to play, but it's like right there, and I want to get it so bad.
$60. Wait till it gets cheap.
All right. It is a Sony published game, right?
I don't know if it is or not. I'm pretty sure it's exclusive. I don't know if they're the ones publishing it.
Yeah, I think they're publishing it, which makes me think that it will go on like a super cheap discount one of these days.
Yeah, it's Sony.
Yeah, so whenever they start releasing some DLC and it's been out for a couple of months, they'll probably hit it with a huge discount randomly here and there. So
I'm glad I bought me a PS4 instead of a Switch Watch or whatever the hell this is.
Yeah. You've got a lot more gaming options right now on a PS4 than you do on a Switch. So, all right. Anything else you want to talk about before we close up?
I'm good.
All right. Well, thanks again, everybody, for listening. Again, subscribe to us on iTunes or any other podcasting app of your choice. And you know what? Go write us a review on iTunes. If you listen to us regularly, reviews on iTunes always help, especially when it comes to like populating in searches and things like that. So do that. That would help us out. And then, hit us up on Instagram, Project_VCR. Like any of our photos, leave comments, because social media is the way to get to us. And also go to Facebook. We have a page that you can like and then follow. Doug's primarily our Facebook guy, so he posts a lot of shit throughout the course of the day. So go on there, like, comment on stuff, and maybe we'll respond or read your comments here on the show. So with that, thanks again, Doug, for joining me, and welcome to Prime Time, bitch.